Hey there, listeners, and welcome to season 2 of Project Zero. The goal is the same as last year. We're still going to hear the journeys of some of the best project leaders in the game. But this season, though, we're doing something a little different. We're leaning in a little bit more on AI and the impact it's having on the industry. My name is Alex Tuck, and I am the host. I am here with founder of Venture CPO, Dave Reinhold. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be here.
I can't wait to hear your Project Zero stories. It should be a fun one. Cool. Awesome. Dave, start us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Sure. It's crazy to say out loud, but I've been at it for almost 26 years at this point. A couple of years ago, I launched Venture CPO, a product management consultancy that specializes in building digital products from 0 to 1. So we're really a full service agency. We do everything from the upstream strategic planning, discovery, road mapping, requirements, designs, and ultimately collaborating with the development team to build a digital product and launch it to the market. Our clients are essentially outsourcing their product management function to Venture CPO.
That's awesome. And so full disclosure for listeners out there, like we are a project management shop and Dave is a product management shop and we collaborate closely. So whenever there's a product challenge, we pick up the phone and give Dave a call. That sort of alludes to the direction we're going to take this session because I think project and product often gets conflated, right? Like we actually used to offer product management services ourselves at Tuck, but we decided that it was too confusing, right, to explain the difference between project and product management. I was having, like on sales calls, I'd be having conversations about philosophically the difference between the two. And to simplify it, we just focused on project and found an awesome partner in Dave. So I'm hoping on this Project Zero, we'll talk about the differences between product and project. And so it'll probably be more product heavy, but there's so much project management in product that I think we'll get some really good insights for those project managers out there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get started, Dave. So where did it all start? What was your first gig out of college and how'd you get
Yeah.
into it?
I'm going to take us way back, actually. I was born in the late 1970s. So really the last generation born into an analog world that eventually became digital. And so the internet really wasn't even a thing until the early 90s. I was roughly 13, 14 years old. And I remember a very pivotal and impactful moment in my life was getting my first computer, Commodore 64, had the floppy disk drive, maybe, I don't know, 3 megs of RAM, which in today's terms seems ridiculous. And along with that, I got an AOL account connected to my home landline and did my best to actually get some internet access. But the reason I start there is that's when my passion for technology really started, right? Like it opened up my world to this whole digital reality. And that's really what started to fuel my passion for tech. And for me, it was always more about the application of technology, right? And in school, I studied management information systems, MIS. The two routes back then, and largely still the case, it was MIS or CS, computer science, right? MIS was more the application of technology. CS was more building the tech. And so I was always on the MIS side, both in my undergraduate and graduate studies. And out of undergrad, I started my career at Deloitte, fantastic place to start a career. And my role was really a technology auditor, which meant that for the companies that Deloitte was doing the financial statements, they would send in a team of technology auditors to essentially look at the systems and platforms that were generating the numbers that were ultimately making their way to the financial statements. And it was during that work that I actually had a big career aha moment. When you're auditing technology, one of the things you do is meet with the product management folks that built the technology, right? And you learn from them the decisions and the research and the requirements. And for me, that was an aha moment where I realized I want to be on the team of product professionals that are proactively figuring out what problems to solve and the best ways to solve them and how to build technology to solve those problems, as opposed to the person coming in after the fact to audit at how that technology or product was built. And for me, those were two impactful moments. First, getting a computer and then discovering product management early on in my career. And ultimately, that's what led me into product management. And I guess one thing I'd add is typically my work has been with early stage companies, startups, right? And so it's often the case that at startups, there is no formal project management function, right? There's no formal PMO. And so what happens as a product manager, there's often a need to play the role of a project manager for the product builds you're working on, because there's really no kind of dedicated team or resource to own the project side of things. And so inherently, I was developing these project management skills as part of the product builds that I was doing.
Yeah, for sure. We see that so much, and it takes a lot of convincing that project management could be beneficial as like a standalone exercise. Because product managers, at least in my experience, like product managers are terrific, at least the ones that put on the Marty Kagan hat, or they're really focused on like user experience and like
Mhm.
advocating for the user and like seeing their vision and their needs like play out in the product.
Yep.
And it's tricky for that person to also have to play the role of driving things to a deadline. And sometimes, like, frankly, product managers don't, some do and some don't. Some inherently have this skill, but some struggle with the project management side and the hitting the timeline side because they want to get everything right for the user, right? They
Yeah.
want to get it into their hands as quickly as possible, but they want to get it right. So there's that adoption. And it is interesting how, sometimes people again conflate both of those roles and put the two together. So it's great when we both can work together.
Yeah, I like to think of it, and this might be a little bit of an overgeneralization, but for simplicity, I like to think of it as project management ensures that things get built right, whereas product management ensures that the right things get built, right? But you need both sides. I know it's very profound, right? You need both sides working together to ultimately figure out what to build, get it built, and get it launched to the market. So it's really that both functions need to be working together to realize the dream.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we've had many clients where they do have both functions, right? Like it's the product is so successful. Right? We hit all of the goals that we need to, and we get so much user feedback so quickly, and it's so successful. And when we see folks only having PMs and maybe like a BA or something, and then
Yep.
trying to get that across the finish line without a dedicated product manager that owns product. It hurts sometimes, right? Anyway, it's part of the game of consulting. So tell me, that's a great segue into your Project Zero. And so for those of you who haven't listened to the show before, Project Zero is like the first project where things clicked for you. And when I'm interviewing a project manager, I like to say, okay, what was the first project where you learned how to run a project? And in this case, I think, Dave, it would be really interesting to hear where you had that click, that aha moment, that project where you figured out how to be a really awesome product manager.
Yeah, that's a great question. I spent a few years at Deloitte and then ended up at a fintech startup, first startup that I was with, the International Securities Exchange. We built the first digital options exchange or fully electronic options exchange in the US. Really incredible company, very successful. But when I joined, we were very early on. And so there were a couple of project managers that there was no formal PMO function yet, but we were growing and maturing. And so one of the first product builds that I did at ISE was figuring out the right way to approach reporting, right? And so this is, again, true startup fashion. We didn't yet have any sort of a BI tool or any sort of real reporting infrastructure. And so every time there was a need or a request for a report, it would essentially be like a custom report that the developers would have to work on, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
not a very scalable model. And anytime there's higher priority work for the devs, the reports get put on the back burners. My challenge was to figure out, do the research, talk to the users, understand the types of requests, and then evaluate the different options out there for putting in something of a more scalable reporting solution. Naturally, we implemented a BI tool that just made it easy for users to self-serve through a front end, right? So this is in the early 2000s when modern day project management tools like Jira or ClickUp or something like none of this existed, right? And not only that, like none of the cloud-based document management, all the Google Docs and everything, like none of that existed. And here I am as a first-time product manager trying to earn my stripes. And I also have to manage the project side of this, which is something I just never really was challenged to do before. And of course, I had an Excel spreadsheet, which was saved locally on my laptop, wasn't able to share it I could email it around, but if anyone made changes, we had to reconcile the master version. It was a typical nightmare. But I think that product build, which was also my first real project management experience, wow, was it revealing, right? I think it was really challenging to manage cross-functional teams, right? If you think about all the different teams and stakeholders that are involved in a product build or a project like that, I was touching almost every function at the firm and doing that, managing that cross-functionally across the organization, very challenging, especially without the modern day tools. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned pretty quickly is how important relationships are in both product and project management, right? I think relationships are just so critical. I naively assumed that if there was an action item that someone was responsible for this project, that they would just do their action item within the specific timeline. But as we know, that's not really the case. And so as a rookie project manager, I learned this early on. And I think it was really just a matter of folks juggling a ton of balls and just having a lot of other responsibilities. And so sometimes things get prioritized and deprioritized. But what I realize is that it's not a literal, hey, you have to do this. It's relationships are just so critical in terms of having a rapport with the stakeholders, helping them understand the value, not only to themselves, but to the organization and why their collaboration is critical to the outcome of the success of the project.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great point. Did you have, it's a startup. I know the answer to this, but did you have a mentor that was helping you like
I
figure out these project things and these product things?
Yeah, I did. And yeah, there was really outstanding leadership at ISC. So yes, I did. Again, we were an early stage company and things were moving a million miles a minute. And so everyone had to buckle up and wear a lot of hats. And so there wasn't a tremendous amount of hand holding. But for me personally, that's how I learned. That works for me. That I learned very quickly in those models. And so it was a crash course in both product and project management for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously being at Deloitte helps you with that too, right? I tell everyone like, if you want to suck it up, if you want to learn a whole lot in a short period of time, go work for a management consulting firm for 2 years, right? And
Yeah.
you can learn 4 to 6 years worth of how to operate in a corporate environment. And then you can apply those skills to startups and stuff, right? And you just, the thing is, you have to figure out how to pare that stuff back, but you learn how to learn quickly. You're billing at a high rate
Yep.
and you're expected to be the expert, but you aren't the expert. You don't know anything about whatever you're working on. You have to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of fake it till you make it going on
yeah, oh
early
yeah,
on, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Cool, awesome. I would love to start digging into some of your lessons learned, advice, growth. Let's start off with what do you think the number one skill is for a product manager? And you can talk about a project manager too, but I'd love to hear what you think the number one skill is for a product manager.
Yeah, I think there's tremendous overlap when it comes to the skills for both project and product. I think on the theme of the importance of relationships, I think interpersonal skills is pretty important because again, just leveraging relationships to achieve a successful outcome in business is just pretty important. I think also both product and project managers need to be pretty detail oriented. Like you don't want to miss requirements on the product side and you don't want to have errors in your project plan on the project side. I think close attention to detail is pretty key. And I would say, lastly, for both, communication skills pretty important, right? Especially when you're a central hub that connects multiple functions across an organization and you're that quarterback or that common denominator, which I think is true for both product and project, right? Having the ability to clearly communicate, to adapt your style of communication depending on the stakeholder or the group you're talking with, it's pretty important stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think those are great call outs for sure. How are you seeing AI
Uh,
being used in the product space right now? And like, where do you think it's going? Like, where do you think that we're still haven't figured it out yet?
Yeah, hugely impactful. I like to break it down by the different stages of a traditional product lifecycle, whether that's discovery, market research, research synthesis, competitive analysis. There are tools literally that are AI tools that are emerging in every specific phase. And it's pretty cool. Writing a requirements document used to be like a week plus effort for a product manager. And gosh, you can write a clever prompt and get a BRD in seconds, and the output is 85 to 90% of the way there, and you just spend a
Mhm.
couple hours polishing it up. So I think that's exciting. I think a lot of it is still decentralized. And so I hope in the future there are more enterprise solutions that aggregate the various AI point solutions in a more cohesive way. I'm starting to see that in the industry as well. I'm really excited about the vibe coding tools. I think a big game changer, right? Because in the product world, I've been using tools like Lovable and Bolt and V0 to whip up prototypes. So you do your research, you come up with your kind of thesis, you put some requirements around it, and typically you go through a design cycle and then you hand it off to the developers. They develop, you go to the market, you learn and you iterate. But
Mhm.
now with the vibe coding tools, I can very easily whip up a prototype. With that prototype, I could first of all shop it around to some users in the discovery phase and get them to opine on, hey, this meets the mark, or no, I would adjust this. I also think it really changes the dialogue between product management and design and development. Because rather than me going to those functions with a piece of like a document, like a requirements document, I'm now going with a functioning prototype that the developers and the designers can use as a really powerful input for their process, right?
Yep.
And so that's been like a big game changer. I think personally, I think the vibe code tools have more room to grow. They're great for prototypes. I am not yet comfortable pushing them into production as like a full-blown MVP. I'm starting to
Mhm.
see instances where like a very skilled vibe coder can make sure the enterprise level security and the data requirements are all implemented correctly so that you can push it to a production environment. But I think we have a little bit of room to go there. But I do think there's tremendous opportunity in terms of being able to whip up a quick prototype, not just for product management, but really for all sorts of different functions within an org. And then I do think these tools are making it a lot more effective and faster and easier to get through some of the more routine or mundane parts of the product lifecycle. But I do want to emphasize, I think it's still critical that there is a human in the loop that has product experience that could really apply the judgment, if you will, of a product professional. And that's not just me trying to protect my job in the future. I do think these tools are amazingly effective, but there's still a judgment that has to be applied to all of the output before you start investing dollars into building businesses around the products that it produces. So I think over time, the composition of a product organization within a company starts to change. There may be a smaller, like lower amount of more junior folks because you have less junior folks, but they're AI enabled, so they're more effective. But I do think having leadership in place to oversee not only the team, but also the tools is important.
Yeah, I love that. I have 2 comments. One, I'll take the last thing that you just talked about there first. Like, I forget where this data point comes from, and it could just be completely made up by ChatGPT, but I like it either way. Like, something like 85% of your end product is created, um, in the first iteration. So, like, the first thing that you create. So the idea of outsourcing your first iteration to a computer, right, removes all of the creativity. And so, like, the advice that I've heard from a lot of folks is like, okay, do the creative thinking, think about what you want, and then give the prompt to the GPT. And then it incorporates all your creative thoughts, like whether it's like features to build or whatever, right? So, like, building the BRD, it's who cares about how the structure of it? It actually is really good. Probably builds it faster and better than, or definitely builds it faster, probably better than you
Yep.
could, less grammatical errors, right? But the creative part needs to get done first. So to your point, like having that product management professional there at the beginning to do the creative stuff, to take into account like what the users need and want, and then to validate that it's the caliber that you want before you invest all the dollars. It's great. So I love that stat, even if it's completely made up. And but the concept is there, right? That we need to outsource that stuff. My wife says it all the time to the kids. They're like, she's like, stop asking Google these questions. The answer to them, or at least think about what you think the output should be before you ask Google what the
Right.
answer is.
It's good parenting advice.
Yeah, I know. I love that she's a Luddite because it puts me in check, right? I'm just like, all right, let's put another IoT thing in here and we'll figure it out. So that's that. And then the other thing, the vibe coding thing, right? You're more technical than I am, right, Dave? But like still, we aren't coders. We're not technical. I can feel every single coder and developer like rolling their eyes right now because they have this concept of vibe coding, right? And everyone calling it like a miracle. It's not a miracle. What's a miracle actually is being able to prototype like you're describing. Like I vibe coded in 2 hours one night. My kids went to bed early and my wife went to bed early. And I made an app that like pulled all my Strava data in and helped me build out like training plans. Like it was fun. And the thing is, if that was something that we actually wanted to go build, I had a prototype now. It took me an hour to do it. And so it's saving clients so much money and it gives you like this visual that isn't just wireframes anymore. It's like real clickable prototypes,
Hmm.
like functioning prototypes that can integrate in seconds. Like it's so wild. It's so wild. Anyway, it's fun. Fun world we live in.
What a time to be alive, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's like you talk about like how you grew up without same here, right? Like I was a mid-80s guy, but like still I grew up and I was 8 and I had a computer at my house. And my parents were like poor, but they figured out how to get a computer in my house, man. And that changed the trajectory of what I was able to do compared to my peers, right?
Mhm.
And that was a brave new world, right? Like having a computer in every single household, like Microsoft won, man. Like Bill Gates was right. And that was huge. But then now with AI, it's like insane the speed. Like it's insane the speed. Like it's 10x what that was, right?
Yeah.
In changing things. And it's not necessarily all good. It's just fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So speaking of AI, like what do you think what's the coolest way you've seen AI being used? It doesn't have to be in the industry. Just like, have you ever seen any cool novel AI use cases?
Yeah, I think what really excites me is AI in the healthcare space, right? So there's obviously an emergence of EMR, electronic medical records. And I think when you ingest all of these medical records and you apply AI as an intelligence layer on top of that, the potential impact is really profound. And so I'm
Yeah.
thinking like super big picture. Can AI actually increase the life expectancy of humans? I think the answer is yes. And there are a lot of companies that are thinking about this right now and trying to solve this problem. But I think we're going to get to a point pretty quickly, actually, where the dialogue with your doctor really changes. And it's, hey, there's a strong indicator or strong prediction that you're at risk of these things. And the likelihood is much higher because it's based on a tremendous amount of data that's being plowed through in seconds, right? Your data as compared to a large population of other folks. And so I think that's really crazy and super cool because I think obviously a lot of the application of AI is more business focused and that makes sense, right? You can
Yeah.
leverage new technology to do things better, faster, cheaper, and make more money. So that always makes sense. But I think what excites me is more the applications beyond business to better mankind. I know that's a bit lofty, but that's what
Yeah.
excites me. I think that's a really interesting application.
Yeah, I think that's why we work together because we're values aligned. And I feel the same way. And one of the predictions that I've heard from I go to all these healthcare conferences and at this one really advanced healthcare conference, I've never felt so I feel pretty confident in my intelligence, right? But like I walked into this room and I started to talk to these people and learn from these people, and they were physicians, they were administrators, and they understood AI better than I do,
Yeah.
right? Like the data and everything associated. And these were all the same people, right? Like they had all three of those things going on for them. And that was really interesting. So tons of insights. And the insight that I heard that was the most profound to me, and that I think is a really good prediction, is that healthcare is no longer going to be this. I go to my PCP and that PCP tells me to go to all these different specialists and stuff. And hopefully, cross your fingers, there's coordination of care across all of that.
Right. Yeah.
You are going to be the coordination of care assuming that you are of sound mind and all that stuff. But if not, like you'll be able to have support for that either way, right? That's where a human might come in. But with all this extra data and all the AI, you'll be in control of like all the things that you need to do. And you'll be able to do a lot of it remotely. You'll be able to order things like online. You'll be able, like, even my new health insurance plan, we were all sick. Our entire family was sick.
Mm.
And we could just hop on a video call. They chatted with us. We figured it out. And then, like, we could get the stuff ordered and sent to us. And that's already a huge advancement. And I just think that that idea of you being in control of your own health and understanding things and being informed well enough that a combination of AI slash more data slash, you know, plugging in physicians and specialists where necessary is, I think that's the future for sure.
Yeah. And that's an interesting model. But yeah, and like you said, it's already happening. The beginning of it is already happening. But I think that it's so that excites me just as on a personal level, on a human level. Yeah, I mean that's a really exciting application of AI for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So cool. One more question before we wrap up.
Sure.
I'd love to ask this question to folks. I think you'll have a good one. Good answer. If you were to go back and give young Dave some advice about how to approach your career a little bit differently, is there anything you would tell young Dave?
That's a great question. I think I would probably tell my younger self to take more risks and not be quite so conservative. I think early in my career, I spent a lot of time making the safe choice. Obviously, I said earlier I went from a consulting firm like Deloitte to a startup. So that was a risk in itself. But after that change, I tend to stay at companies for a very long time. In some instances, it was for a good reason, but I think in some other instances, I was playing it safe. And at some point, I realized some of the most interesting opportunities come when you step a little bit outside your comfort zone, which may mean leaving a company or may mean going for different roles within a company, right? But I definitely feel like I was a bit too conservative for the first kind of half of my career and wish that I would have been a little bit more aggressive in taking some risks.
Yeah, I like that advice for folks. If you have enough of a cushion, like that's what I tell anyone, right? Create a little cushion, right? Be a little bit uncomfortable at the beginning if you need to create a little cushion and then do exactly that, right? Go out there and take risks.
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
that's fun. I love it. Love it. Dave, that's great. How can people get in contact with you?
Sure. So you can visit my website, venturecpo.com. You could also find me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at dave@venturecpo.com. Would love to hear from you.
Awesome. And we'll drop that in the description as well. So
Cool.
I think that's it. Dave, thanks for joining us. I really appreciated your stories and your advice. And thanks for helping us demystify the product project dichotomy that lives out there.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Great chat.
Yeah. And thanks to all of you who joined us for Project Zero this week. Be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts. And we will catch you next time with another great project leader story.